So I'm going to talk something of the subject of conservation of built heritage. It's relatively a new concept. I'm trained as an architect, and I realized that I was interested in conserving of the heritage buildings. And it was a very interesting episode that I was the second batch of architect to do the masters in School of Planning in Delhi, and then to do it from University of York. And when the time I started practicing, you met the municipal commissioner, and I introduced my card, and I gave him my card as conservation architect, and he had not heard about it. So he said, "Oh, you're a conservation architect." So it's been a long journey of 30 years from what we were initially conversing to actually conserving buildings. So it's a relatively new field which has been there. In the West, it has been there for more than a century and a half. It's basically the World War I which impacted the environment. So there's a slight difference when we talk of monuments, we are talking of archaeology, but here we are talking of built environments. Any city, if you see, especially the Indian cities, this is the kind of the scenario which we get, which is quite run down. These are beautiful cities, beautiful places, but something which is very common through most of the cities in India is that it's run down, it's neglected. One of the major reasons for this is the Rent Control Act, which is of 1940s, which has been, the rents have been frozen. So for the last 60, 70 years, the landlords have never been able to manage to really plow the money back to the buildings to maintain it. And this is one of the major concerns, which several central government has tried to implement this as kind of rules, but the state governments have refused to find it out. So what happens is that you have rental housing, which was the affordable housing, which was what every city has. And these are the normal grains of the building. So you have these buildings which are unlisted, unloved, ignored buildings. And these are the ones which, the axe of development falls on them because they are not significant. Mumbai, the city from where I come, is the first city to have introduced the heritage legislation, which was introduced way back in 1995. And in the past 30 years, we've seen many heritage sites being conserved, but similarly alarming, the heritage is being lost. This is a classic example to show you how these buildings, which are the old buildings, get demolished, and you have the new buildings coming in. The one particular slide on your bottom right is the map of Mumbai laid horizontally, and what you see in white, is the existing build stock. And the one which is in yellow is the one where the development is going to be in the next 20 years. Now imagine that your city is being exposed to such tremendous pressures, urban pressures, and for which there's no proper infrastructure. If you see the photograph on your left here, this is the St. Thomas's Cathedral, which is the origins of Mumbai. And that building has become dwarfed because you have many other high-rise buildings which have come up. So what we are really concerned is the cities which were very well planned, which were developed, are getting eroded. This particular example is the city of Mumbai, where the fort walls were demolished in the 19th century, and you had new architecture which came in. And this new architecture has become today's heritage. This particular stretch is declared as a World Heritage Site. So it raises a very important question that yesterday's architecture is today's heritage. But is today's architecture going to be tomorrow's heritage? Now, the very fact that if it can't be, that's a matter of real concern. And that's one of the reasons why we should be conserving, rather than to go by any other yardsticks or standards of history and other things. So this is what is happening to our cities, where you find fractured developments which are happening, which are basically greed-oriented. It's not seeing the city at a larger thing. In India, it's a typical, this is one interesting slide to sum up how conservation is. We are a developing nation. We are copying the West, where it was very well established and it was defined. So we have 6 blind men, and everyone sees the elephant of conservation differently. You have an architectural historian who wants no change. You have a builder who wants complete change. And you have the user or the society which is practically unconcerned. For them, living and sustainability is very important. An ordinary architect, he'll be happy to do, to do redevelopment and to get assignment so that his bread and butter keeps going. And you have the government for government, development is on the agenda, but not the conservation aspect. You've never seen any proactive initiatives by any government. And this is where the trouble lies in conservation, and especially for people like me who are practicing conservation, we have to do a bit of extra activism. We have to go a step forward to seek CSR help and to find public-private partnership. So there's the last variety of conservationists, which is a bridge between the extremes of historians and builders, trying to be the middle path, trying to work out solutions which will help in conserving of the environment. So when we talk of conservation, the spectrum is a very large spectrum. It encompasses area, the entire area. I was fortunate to have worked on Victoria Terminus Station to nominate it as a World Heritage Site. And you also now have the High Court and the Rajabai Clock Tower, which is the Gothic Victorian ensemble, which has been recently listed as World Heritage Sites. India is a country which has 43 World Heritage Sites, out of which we have 33 cultural sites, 7 are natural sites. And some of the youngest World Heritage Sites are located in India, and especially in Bombay, which is the Art Deco and the Victoria Terminus Station. So when you're dealing with conservation, the spectrum is really large. You deal with area, you deal with city levels, you deal with area levels, and then you can come down specifically to building conservation. And if you're more interested in certain specific arts like stained glass or cast iron or lime plaster, then there's a specialization for that. And there are curators also who can, which is the other extended version of conservation. Now, through various case studies and examples in the last 20, 25, 30 years, I just want to show you how conservation can work as a tool for, for this kind of insensitive development which is happening. There was an unfortunate fire which happened in 2000 in the Corporation Hall, which is one of the very fine Gothic Revival buildings, and maximum damage had happened there. Whenever a fire happens, the damage is of two types. It's the structural damage and the non-structural damage. The structural damage is often caused by the water which is poured in, and there's a sudden change of temperature, as a result of which stones crack up. The non-structural damages is basically the soot, which gets deposited. In any conservation project which we try to do, we try to revive a lost craftsmanship. So this was a project which was done 22 years ago. So the stone craftsmen, the temple stone craftsmen were bought. They were trained specially to execute a Gothic Revival building. We even tried to revive the lost art of gilding, which was very prevalent during the late 19th century. And in conservation, we try to reuse, repair, and try to do the minimum intervention which is required. So in this particular cases, all the wood which had charred down was used to make moldings and other things. And this is the view of the hall, which is what was restored 20 years ago. And I'm glad to say that now it's opened up to public to come and visit it. So conservation, one particular example, an unfortunate episode of fire really triggered, and the people who were the cooperators was quite surprised to see that they had such a fine hall which was within their building, which was earlier unnoticed. Now from here is another success story of another very interesting building, which was again owned by the municipal corporation. It was an NGO which was intact, which started the initiative led by Tasneem Mehta, and there was a public-private partnership along with the Jamnalal Bajaj Foundation. So this is how the museum was, and when we started working in, this is how the building interiors were. Completely insensitive, the wiring ran, in whichever way. The electrical switches were located right at the entrances, and this is how it was. So when we do conservation, it is a meticulous study which is done with historical references. So we had referred the archival images, and we had to conjecture the lost tympanum, and this is how the whole process of conservation happens. In conservation, we also use the like-to-like materials. In this particular case, there was lime which was used, so there was a revival of lime which was there. And all this was happening at a time when this was a complete lost art. Now imagine this building getting converted into, with this kind of richness. It won the highest UNESCO award. It has become the kind of, it has revived, it has become the cultural center, and all the important tourist destination, make it a compulsory visit here. There's another particular example which is very close to my heart, which is a so-called ordinary building which was located in the heart of Bhuleshwar, which is inner city of Mumbai. And here, this was a building which is built in 1905, which had shops below, which used to subsidize the residences, dharamsala, which is to serve for the needy upstairs to come and stay. And this was a building which was, because of Rent Control Act, it became neglected, and the owners decided to renovate this building. And with the help of, with their own investments, they gave the best of best amenities. They air-conditioned the space. They provided other amenities. And then this building started being used extensively, and it started generating money. So this is one point, that this building could have been demolished, but it was conserved rightly, and it is now one of the most sought places where people go and have lectures, and even it's used in the Bollywood shoots. So this is an active dharamsala back again, and the city benefited because the building was not demolished. Now something which is very important, which I was talking earlier, that everything which we see in Mumbai, or for that matter in India, is more of redevelopment, where you erase a part of history and you construct something new. Here I was given a free hand and an opportunity whether you want to repair the building or you want to reconstruct it. We opted for repairing. This is owned by a trust, which is Garib Zoroastrian Renthand Fund, and they have 7 or 8 buildings which you can see through the blue line. This one particular slide is most important because what you see on your extreme left is how the whole thing was planned. And on your right, top right, is the buildings which the gray buildings are the ones which have already got redeveloped. If I don't conserve the remaining tile roof buildings, then you'll be getting an environment which is on your left, bottom left, and that certainly is an undesirable place to stay. So this is where we demonstrated conserving these 6 and 7 buildings. And this was a point to prove to the administration that if you encourage and if you give more incentives to repairs, then it is a better place, something which is completely missing and is being neglected. Lastly, I come to something which is very important is now I'm talking about an urban scale project which also has architectural conservation and also has conservators working, which is Flora Fountain. It's a beautifully carved fountain which is associated with the city, and it's the prime landmark of the city. It was completely shipped from England, made in Portland stone. Norman Shaw was the architect, and James Fawcett was the sculptor. It was located at the intersection of the 2 roads, which was then where the fort walls were demolished. And this fountain was not much in use. It was repeatedly painted because it was given to an agency to look after it. And every time they decided to, in India, we often have beautification which is done rather than real conservation. So it was just painted. And since it was in the heart of the city square, it was a very difficult, challenging exercise. It took 3 years to work upon it. You had to call the conservators from Delhi in TAC. They came and they worked on it to clean this paints with the help of steam. So it was good 1.5 years of exercise, very meticulously conserving, and rarely something like that done by any municipal corporation. So this is one example where it was successfully attempted. While we were removing the paint, we realized that there were a lot of insensitive repairs, which were cementitious repairs, like a particular hand which was done in cement, which was put. And just because this hand was put in cement, it was painted, and since then the painting cycle started. So a very meticulous exercise was carried out of getting new hand made, which would exactly replicate, and this is what conservation is all about. Lastly, it comes to a kind of a larger thing, that it was just a monument where people just passed. There was a lot of green open spaces around, but it was inaccessible. But this was an opportunity that you were not only conserving a monument, but you also were improving its setting, the plaza. So we decided we'll remove the green and make it more accessible, and we paved it with the local stone. And when we were doing the same thing, we discovered some tram tracks, and this is a part of history which we left, and it's very well appreciated. Now this whole area has got transformed, and it is being used positively by the city. So this is one small example to show conservation works, and it can be tried rather than just going the redevelopment way. Thank you.